G'day. Welcome to the 30th episode of Fearless Singer Podcast. And I wanted to do something really special for the Big 3-0. And I have a very special human on the podcast today, Karen Gunton. Karen Gunton is a self-leadership coach. She has her very own podcast. She has a masterclass series. There's an ebook at karengunton.com. And the reason why she's on is I met Karen at a business conference for heart-centered entrepreneurs at the coast. Was it a couple of months ago now?
Yeah.
Oh my God, time just flies. And very, very lucky to have been gifted Karen's Oracle cards in the conference bag. And I have been using these ever since here in the studio. So when, a student comes at the end of their session, we pull one of these. It's interesting that I don't do it at the beginning. I've only ever done it at the end.
That must be what feels right. It feels right to do that.
Yeah. And so these are beautiful cards. I just want to quickly show them. Sorry, Karen.
No, it's good.
I just want to show these cards. They're just absolutely stunning. They're all my favorite colors, by the way. And I love pastels.
Gotta love the rainbow.
Exactly. And they just have one word on them. And so I just get my students to hold them, put their energy on them and pull the card that feels right to them. And then there'll be one word. So I just pulled simplicity. And then as per Karen's advice, you just ask the person who pulls the card to just, think of, okay, well, what does that mean to you? And the first answer that comes to them is right. Is that right, Karen? Have I been doing it right?
No, that's absolutely how I recommend doing it. I think I was inspired to make the Oracle cards because I like the idea of learning and listening to our own inner voice and learning to trust that. But anybody who doesn't feel very maybe born intuitive, or if you're like me and you feel like you're spiritual, but you don't really have like a set sort of idea of your beliefs, it can feel a little bit inaccessible. And I wanted to create something that felt really accessible and really is about listening to your inner voice and knowing what that sounds like and feels like to you. So I purposely tried to keep the card simple so that there isn't a lot of information. And so you can just go with what your gut says or what your heart says or wherever else your intuition lives, and just practice going with the first thought. I always say the first thing that pops in your head is what it is. That's what the card means.
It's honestly, it's so powerful and it's amazing. And every single student that gets a response as well straight away, they get really excited. They go, oh, this is what that means. And it usually has something to do with their creative journey or fine. It's interesting that you're referring to people, you're helping people find their inner voice, and this is what,
and you're helping them with their vocal voice.
Their vocal,
really cool.
Exactly. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's all their voice. It's
right.
Finding, I guess your mission, your purpose, and transmitting that out into the world, whether that looks like singing or speaking or intuiting. So let's go back. So when did you, I guess, start learning about your intuition? How old were you when you were like, oh, there's something more to this?
Good question.
This life.
Yeah. Well, I think ever since I was young, I've always kind of been interested in meaning and purpose. So that's probably where my sense of intuition and spirituality kind of comes from. I've always been interested in what's the meaning of that, or just picking up on little signs or that little tap on your shoulder. And so I can remember from a young age just paying attention to I've always been a collector of quotes and lyrics. And even when I was young, I was one of those people who was trying to figure out what the meaning of life was. I think my whole family was like, "What is she so weird?" And then, but I can remember, even at a young age thinking about that stuff. But then I went off, to do a science degree, and I became a teacher and kind of just went on that sort of track of education. And and then when I came back to it, probably was when I moved here. You can tell I have a Canadian accent. So we moved, I left my job as a teacher and moved with my husband and our child here to Australia. And that was like 17 years ago. We thought that we were only going to stay for 4 years, but here we still are. And when I did that, I think that's when I really started to think again about those ideas of purpose and meaning and what am I here for? What am I doing? And what do I want? Because I got knocked kind of out of that just like path of job, marriage, child, like, all that kind of what I think now of is kind of a little bit nonsense, but in the late 90s, that's what we did. And anyhow, so I moved to Australia and I started to think about, what I wanted and who I was being in the world. That led me on a path to starting a business and then teaching people about starting a business, and then doing some business coaching and supporting other women in business. And really all of that was, like you said, around how we show up and share our voice, how we share what we love, how we share our purpose and share who we are. And it was that journey that really got me back to, knowing myself, listening to my inner voice, following the path of intuition and inner guidance instead of always what other people say you should do. I think when you move on to the other side of the world and you leave your job and your career and you go off the beaten path, it's a real sort of opportunity to say, well, what direction do I listen to? And deciding to listen to your own instead of what everyone else says you should do.
Was there like a pivotal moment event that sort of shook you up a little bit to get back on that track, or was it more just like oh no, that's the sign? Did you have any like physical signs?
Yeah.
Did you start seeing like, Australiana, before you moved? Or
well, we picked here because it was sunny and warm. So that's how we ended up here. But I think it's kind of like a lot of little moments, like I call them, those sort of turning points, where you could pick either way to go. And what the thing that got me starting a business was because I wanted freedom. I wanted my own money. We were borrowing money from family and we were here with loans, and I couldn't work because of our visa. And so I thought, well, if I started my own business, then I could have some money of my own. So that was kind of like what I wanted. And it really wasn't really about the money. It was about having my own thing. I know that now. But at the time I was like, I need freedom. And what that was, I think my inner self was just longing for something that was mine. And that kind of then took me on this long journey that, was very meandering, trying different things. But there was a moment that really stands out when you ask that question. So I'd been coaching people on how to start a business of their own and running my own business. And I had this little period of time, this is like around 2012-ish, where I was feeling a bit lost, a bit like, what am I doing? Is this really what I want to keep doing? And I decided the business I had was a photography business, and I decided to take a break from that. But I was feeling like, what's next for me? And there's the quote that inspired this Lighthouse Revolution deck, from Anne Lamott, that says, lighthouses don't go running all over an island looking for boats to save. They just stand there shining. And I think I was on Pinterest, back in the Pinterest days, and I saw that quote, they just stand there shining. And I thought I still have goosebumps thinking about that moment. For me, it was like one of those moments where I just saw that and I said, that's what I want. That's how I want to feel. That's what I want to, who I want to be. And what is that? What would that be like for me? And so that one quote then went kind of viral to me. Like it became like a guiding force. And I was having a conversation with a friend who is very spiritual. And when I told her that, she said, that you have to follow the path of that, because whatever unfolds is going to matter. And so that's what I did. And I just took that idea of the lighthouse and I thought to myself, what would that mean to me? And I began sort of teaching people about and myself about what it might mean to show up and shine, in the sense that if that's what we want to do, then we need to be a lighthouse. We ourselves need to build our own lighthouse. And so that's what the kind of basis of the whole deck is the components of a lighthouse, and the lighthouse keepers, that are within us that can help us to be a lighthouse and to show up and shine. So pivotal moment that, then went on to sort of change my path, and it helped me to find my voice, because I had something really strong that I could talk to people about, kind of a mission, it became a mission, and that became something that was what I shared and how I showed up and taught people and shared with people, and still do today.
Honestly,
so
that's probably
yeah.
one of the most powerful things I've ever heard. Thank
No,
you.
thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's interesting because, a lot of singers, instrumentalists, performers struggle with that idea of being the lighthouse they
Mm,
struggle with that idea of shining, even though it's so innately in them, and it is part of our mission is to stand up on stage and just
yeah.
be. I had a really pivotal moment when I was in my early 20s when I saw honestly, one of Australia's best performers, Patience from the Greats, perform, and I just went, oh, she was being a lighthouse. She lit
Mm,
up the stage, and I said to myself, oh, this singing business isn't self-serving. She is offering a massive service right now,
yes.
because my
Yes.
whole
Yeah.
body just went, oh, I just felt so empowered and inspired. So, to be able to stand up on a stage takes so much courage,
Mm.
just to let your light shine. But from your experience, what do you think are the things that stop people from recognizing that they're a lighthouse?
Well, I think sometimes we have this sort of judgment around, are we a good enough? Are we enough? And sometimes we can have this idea, well, that's the kind of person who gets to shine. That kind of person, whatever this idea we have in our head, and I'm not enough of whatever that is. And I think that that's a big thing. Like, we have these rules or expectations that we kind of have gathered over the years, and that stuff can kind of hold us back because of that picture, that we think you have to measure up to, or you have to be kind of thing that you aren't. And that's kind of what I like about the lighthouse as a symbol, because it's about knowing what kind of lighthouse you are, not compared to anybody else. The kind of light that you want to shine in the way you want to shine it, with your authentic style and your authentic way, and not doing it like anyone else does. And that other thing I think is neat about the lighthouse, at least the way I teach it, and you've used the card, so that I've got kind of 7 components to the lighthouse, through kind of dividing it up into different things that I think are important. So we can think that the only way that we shine is because our light has to be like this certain thing, this kind of bright, powerful force, or this extroverted thing, or this wild and crazy thing, or this, ultra cool, like vibe, or whatever the rules we have for ourselves. But the reality is we each have our own light, and we have our own way, and that's only one part of it. When you look at the lighthouse, there's a lot more to it than that. There's that strong foundation. There's the tall tower that helps you feel, strong and aligned. And there's the light itself. There's the harbor, that we live in. There's the sky above. So there's not just one component. It's not just about how you particularly shine your light, but it's how you come together as a whole self, as a whole lighthouse, and do it your way. And I think that is one of my favorite things to think about the lighthouse. It's kind of permission, in a way. It's permission just to you
be
get to make
you.
your kind of
Yeah,
lighthouse,
yeah.
and on your kind of stage, on your kind, with your kind of light, with your kind of harbor, and the people around you
Mm.
that support you. And permission, I think, is the big thing there, that you get to do it your way.
How would you describe your lighthouse?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I'll be really honest. My lighthouse has been pretty wobbly the last few years. I've gone through some personal stuff and some family stuff that was hard. And I kind of joke around now that I'm like the lighthouse who's had a very dim light, and so I know what that feels like. And I'm a self-leadership coach, and I call myself an unstuckter because I like to help people get unstuck, but I'm also an unstuckter that's been very stuck, and I think that's just part of life, is figuring out how we keep standing through all of that. So it's been interesting because I went from having this place of like, oh, I'm here to share my story, I'm here to help support others, and I'm here to help people shine their light bright in the world. And then when you get knocked off course a little bit, it can make you question if you're doing the right thing. But through that process, what it's taught me is that I know for sure, because I've done it, that no matter how wobbly you feel and how dim you feel, you're still a lighthouse. You just have to come back to it.
We can't forget that the lighthouse is also standing in the storm with everybody else.
Yeah.
And it has to go through maintenance programs.
That's right. Yeah.
So the lighthouse also, needs the TLC.
That's right.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, like, what I've come back to is that it's up to me to kind of come back to my light, to think about, again, what fuels that light, what my purpose is, and to shore up some of the wobbly bits, that have been unattended to the past few years. And all of that's up to me. Like, I get to do that. I don't have to wait for permission. I don't have to wait for a magic wand, someone to come and save the day. Like, I am that person. I'm the keeper of my lighthouse, and I get to come back and over again and again and again, as often as I need to keep, figuring out what fuels the light and what kind of light I want to shine and who I want to be in the world. I've got an 18-year-old daughter who's just going to uni, and I was saying to her, well, I haven't figured out what I want to be yet when I grow up. Like, I think sometimes there's so much pressure that we are supposed to get it right. And once we figure it out, that's just it. But that's not life. That's just not life. We hit wobbly bits all the time, but we can come back to our light all the time.
It makes things interesting. Otherwise, it would be a pretty dull story.
That's right.
It would be like Pleasant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And our art, I think our art, our voice, our story, it comes from all of that, right? Like, that's what gives you, what you're here to share with others is everything you've been through, is what fuels that. So that's the meaning, I think, on the other side of all those wobbly bits.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's just like you said, it's oh gosh, without sounding lame, but it's kind of like a gift. It's like it's like a slap in the face, but here you go.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Take it now. You've learned all these things, and you can share it with other people.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I used to kind of think, oh, I'm just this, this will be my year. I figured out what I want to share. I've overcome my fear. I'm going to just get up on the stage and share this and teach this or whatever. And then, you never have one of those years, because there's always another thing. Like, our lives are just full of all sorts of hard stuff. And sometimes that's inner stuff, and sometimes that's outer stuff that happens. So it's always just a work in progress. And I no longer kind of have that idea of like, oh yeah, tick these boxes, I'm ready. Because you're not ever really. Like, there's always a new thing that you're pushing through and overcoming or facing or rising above,
Karen, we hear a lot this phrase of, just show up. It's about just showing up. What does that mean to you?
Well, I think that I have used that for myself a bit. Just show up and shine, just show up and help someone today, just show up and just take one next step. And I think that that can be a helpful push sometimes. But as I've shared, I've been through a period of struggle and a period of just having to get back to my light again. And what I've learned through that is, I think sometimes we can put pressure on ourselves, and we can feel like, oh yeah, you just have to, just overcome that obstacle, just overcome that resistance, just show up and do it anyways. And it can be a little bit jarring, because we feel like that whatever resistance we feel or whatever worry we feel or fear, that it's something to fix. or get over or just overcome or, just push it aside and just show up anyway. And so my perspective, I think, has changed through the struggles I've been through. And it's now more about allowing for that. Like, I believe we can just show up, and also we can be bloody scared. Like, we can actually, the fear is real, the resistance is real, the worries we have are real, the part of us inside that's going, whoa, 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 I'm not so sure about that. Like, that's a real part of us. And I think if we can turn towards those parts of us, like they're a friend, like they're part of our inner team, our inner circle, and say, I see what you're feeling. Like, I get it. You are real. That matters. That thing that you're feeling is true and real. So let's just face it, let's allow it. So I think that my perspective now is a little bit different. It's around allowing and also showing up, but the vibe is different. I used to be like, just dissolve that resistance, get over that fear, leave all that crap behind, fix it, adjust it, up level it. And that's just not my perspective anymore. I'm trying to embrace those parts of me that are resistant, because I think they're real. They are real parts of us that are really feeling those things. And also, it doesn't mean our whole self is a resisting. We can have one part of us that's like, are we sure we want to be doing this? And then when we strengthen our sense of self and we listen to that inner voice and we listen to that inner guidance and we know our whole self is ready to move forward and show up, even if there is an inner part of us that's still kind of terrified of that showing up.
It sounds really loving and kind.
Yeah, I think it is. And when I was first learning about this idea of allowing and accepting that resistance, I didn't know how. I was like, what? What? How does a person allow these feelings? Like, I think my approach before was just so like, come on, just show up and shine. And yeah. And the other thing I think, which is, again, goes back to the lighthouse, is that there might be a part of us that's like, not so sure about the showing up thing. Like, you're asking me to do what? And then there's another inner part of us that's probably like, hell yeah, like, I got this. And so, like with the lighthouse, one of the components of the lighthouse that I share is the rock star. That's the one who's ready to shine and share and, project that light outwards. And that's awesome. So those parts of the journey that rock star loves, we can hand over the keys to the bus. We can pass the mic. We can be like, you do your bit and you go out there and you shine. And meanwhile, the part of us inside that's feeling really resistant, we can hold their hand, we can embrace them, we can wrap them up in a warm blanket and just watch the rock star take over.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a way that we can kind of embrace all the parts of us, and we can allow those parts of us that really are ready to shine do that, while also not denying that there are parts of us that are like, I'm not so ready to show up and shine.
Yeah, listen, I think that's so beautiful and so powerful. Can we talk everybody through the cards? So
Yeah.
let's assume I know nothing
Okay.
about these beautiful cards. Let's tell us about them.
Okay, perfect. So as I've mentioned, I've based these cards on the idea that the lighthouse, we can be the lighthouse. So we're here, and I really do believe that we're all here to shine our light in the world in whatever way we choose. And a way that we can do that is by being a lighthouse. But I've divided up into 7 components: the lighthouse, so the harbor, the foundation, the tower, the spiral staircase inside, the beam, the beacon, that pushes out to all those boats out there that need it, the light itself, the harbor above. So there's 7 components, and there's 7 lighthouse keepers, which I think of those parts of us, they're all inside of us, those 7 lighthouse keepers, and we can, pass the mic to each one. We can strengthen, we can foster and honor, we can allow whatever their experience is. and each of those lighthouse keepers can help us to shine. And the colors, they each have so it's kind of the card deck, it's like suits, right? So there's 7 lighthouse components, there's 7 lighthouse keepers, and there's 7 colors of the rainbow. And so there's 7 suits basically, with the queen being the lighthouse keeper for each. And another interesting thing about them, if you have anybody who is aware of the chakra system, which is like our energetic system of ourself. And again, I'm not like a total like, woo, let's go full on there. But an interesting thing is that the lighthouse components overlap that. So if you already know about, the idea of your voice chakra, your throat chakra, then the component, the beacon component, is what overlaps that. So anything that you kind of already know maybe about your own energy in that way, the lighthouse can add to it or supplement it in some way. And I think that's kind of neat to think of ourselves, as the lighthouse, and then those lighthouse keepers as being parts of us that are here to help us shine our light in the world.
And one of those lighthouse keepers is a rock star?
Yeah. So there's the rock star, there's the sage, there's the earth mama, there's the free spirit. And so the more you kind of play with the deck, you can get to know those different parts of the lighthouse and parts of the and the lighthouse keepers. And over on my website too, I've got a little free ebook with the lighthouse keepers. So
wonderful. That's KarenGunton.com, but I'll put it in the show notes as well.
Perfect. Yeah.
And while we're here, please follow Karen over on Instagram. It's just at Karen Gunton, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll also tag you in the show notes.
Thanks. Yeah. So that's a bit of a peek into the 7 components of the lighthouse. And as you said, I've tried to keep the cards like pretty simple. So each card just sort of has one word, one image that kind of helps with one component of the lighthouse. And one, you can easily just pick a card, any card that you like. You can also just take out one component if you want. Yeah. If you're like, oh, my inner rock star is feeling wobbly, I'm not so sure about this showing up in shine business, you could just take out that part of the deck and just play with just those cards and just see what message one of those cards has to help you, build your inner rock star. And that can be a way to play with it in sort of a different way maybe than anyone else who's tried another deck. So
I love that. I'm so going over to your website and signing up for that ebook. It sounds amazing. And I have to say that I think what really attracted me to you, Karen, is you're so aesthetically cool.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, your dress, your earrings, you're just so beautiful. So I was just like, oh, who is that groover? And sauntered over. Yeah. So,
thank you. Yeah. That's me trying to allow my inner rock star to have a little bit of self-expression. Yeah.
You do it so well. So
and that's what I think is so neat, is like everybody has that, right? Everyone has that part of them, and that is the rock star, the sage, the free spirit, whatever that is. And there's no comparison to anyone else. You get to just be you, in the sense that this is the lighthouse you're building, and you get to shine your light in your way.
Oh, I think that's really, really powerful. And there'll be people that really need to hear that you can shine your light in your own way. And it's all about allowing, giving yourself permission. And and then also I love this idea of building this inner world for yourself as well, knowing that there's all these different components, and love every single one of them and honor every single one of them as well. That's what I've learned from you.
Thank you. And I think that's been the thing that's made a big difference to me. I think sometimes, in some sort of self-development places, we can think, oh, we have to like I said, get over our resistance, we have to work on our mindset. It's really a vibe of like fixing, and we're not broken. We're not broken. Who we are is actually really, really remarkable. We're all, each of us, our own brilliant light. Our light is made up of lots of different colors and shades. Each of us is different in that way. And I think that the more we kind of have that strong sense of self, and strengthening our sense of self, and that includes permission to shine your way, the more we believe we're worthy of shining our light, the more we feel confident that we can show up and do it, and we can embrace those parts of us that feel wobbly, because our sense of self is so strong. That's
Oh,
what I hope anyways. That's what
that's so
that's what I'm working
beautiful.
on, and that's what
Oh,
the
thank
message I've been
you.
sharing lately.
Hey, I was thinking, only if you feel obviously putting you on the spot. I thought maybe both of us could just pull a card for
Sure.
each other. Yeah.
Sure. Actually,
So
I have an idea that you might not
yeah.
have even tried yet with the
Okay.
cards.
Oh
So
yeah,
this might be
please.
something new you can do at the
I
end of your session.
love
Do you want to
this.
learn
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I'd
so
love to.
lots of times we just pull one card, which is, I think, super valuable. You can do that at any time of the day and just first thought, best thought. But another way to use the deck is actually to purposely pick a card. So
Mm.
let's say we were talking about that idea of show up and shine. So let's say we're thinking, okay, I need to embrace my inner rock star because today I've got to show up and shine, and I'm not really feeling too confident about that. So you can purposely look through the deck and pick a card that is the thing you want.
What
You're like,
sorry, what does that say? I
this one
can't
is
see
the
it.
rock star I've
Oh,
picked.
Rockstar. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Okay.
And just because that's what we were kind of talking about a little
Yeah,
bit. So
absolutely.
the way to do this is just to be purposeful and just be like, oh yeah, that card sounds like what I
Mm.
need today. Or that card is the thing I really want more of in my lighthouse in this particular moment in time. And so you can purposely just flick through the deck and choose
It's so
one.
funny. The three that I just saw that stood out to me was allow, permission, everything that we've spoken about today, sole purpose.
Okay, so pick one
Yeah.
card that feels like a
Okay.
thing
All
you
right.
want for yourself in this moment.
Ooh, gosh, so many great ones. Oh, hang on. Sorry, this could take a while.
That's fine. While you're picking, I'll tell you what we're going to do next. So
Okay.
so this is rather than just picking a random card and seeing what it means, you're purposely choosing one you want.
Yeah.
That's the thing I want for myself in this moment. And then once you've picked that card and you're like, yeah, that's the card that represents what I want, then you pop it back in the deck. And then what you
Oh,
do,
listen. Yep, I think I want faith and trust.
oh, I love that.
And it's interesting because I just saw, obviously, there's a workplace around the corner that it's obviously doing a PD today because there's all a bunch of administration looking ladies blindfolded and,
Oh,
and one
doing
of
some
them's leading
trust
them doing
something.
some. I'd be like, I would not be doing that on this street.
That sounds something very wobbly. There's a part of me that really resists that.
Oh, me too. 100%. So, yeah, I think
Okay,
for
so
that
you've got your card you
purpose, faith
want.
and
And so
trust.
now
Yeah.
what you do is you actually pop it in your deck and
Yeah.
shuffle your deck up a bit. And you
Okay.
can do that however you want. You can cut the deck and stick
Yeah.
it somewhere. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Shuffle it up until you feel like, okay, this feels good.
Yeah.
And then what you need to do then is just flick back through the deck to find that card. And again, that might take a second because it's somewhere random
Oh,
in
I
there.
found it.
Oh, you did? Okay, so don't take it totally out yet. What you
Okay.
want to do once you find that card is take also the card in front of it and the card behind it.
Oh, okay.
So the card that you picked as I found mine.
Yeah. Okay.
The card that you picked as the one that you want for yourself in this moment.
Yeah.
And then you're also going to take out the card behind it and the card in front of it.
I've got that.
Yeah. So this little way, now this is where our intuition comes in because we pick the thing we want. And I picked a rock star, and the card behind it is something to leave behind. To help you today tap into your inner rock star. And so the card behind for mine was visionary. So that's one of the lighthouse keepers. And some people do this and they think, well, how am I supposed to leave behind my inner visionary? But it might be something like a little rule or an expectation or a story that my inner visionary is telling me. Something like, rules or expectations. So what was yours?
Vulnerable.
Oh, so again,
Yeah.
you might be like, how am I supposed to leave behind being vulnerable? But maybe it's a rule you have about what you think vulnerable is,
Yeah.
or a story you've been telling yourself
I think
about what it means
I
to be
think
vulnerable.
sometimes I forget that you're allowed to save 10% for yourself. That's a bit of a
Ah,
rule, for
yeah,
performing is,
yeah,
while, to be vulnerable obviously is to be courageous, as we've been taught by Brene Brown.
yes,
That I think that means that I have to just bear all, on stage.
yeah,
However,
right,
like there's this rule in performing is like you're allowed to keep 10% for yourself. And I think
yeah.
that goes for, business as well. You're allowed to just keep some sacred.
Yeah.
So that's great. That's
That's
a really
really
good
good. I
reminder.
love that. And so again, this is like your first thing that pops in your head is your best thing. And that rule
Mm,
popped into your head. And
yeah.
so there might be something there, like to leave behind this idea that you have to be bare it all,
Yeah.
and rather and that gives you maybe a feeling of trust to get up on stage, knowing you're allowed to keep some of you for
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's really
So
beautiful.
that's something to leave behind, the card behind, and the one in front is something to help us step forward.
Oh, mine is foundation.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So to step forward in trust, you need to have a strong foundation to step
Mm,
onto.
yeah.
So whatever pops in your head that feels like foundation.
I feel like for me it's a bit of a confirmation that I'm doing the right things to build in building those foundations for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah,
Confirmation is perfect.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like yeah,
Yeah.
you're doing it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Mine was belonging. So in
oh,
order to
okay.
be that rock star, my thought was to start in a place where I have a sense of belonging, where people already love me and accept me, and I could practice my rock star showing up and shining in a place that's safe before I expand my comfort zone. Maybe start in a safe spot where I feel a sense of belonging
Oh,
first.
that's beautiful. That's so
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, Karen, one piece of advice for the singer that maybe they could be at different parts of their journey. They could be wanting to get up on a stage and sing, but are struggling, with fear-based beliefs,
Mhm.
or they could be at a part of their career where they're ready to sort of take that next step into expansion, but there's some resistance there. So one pearly piece of advice that you could impart to that singer on their journey.
Um, I would say the most important thing you can do in those moments of whatever step that you're taking next is to strengthen your sense of self. That's the prerequisite. Your strong sense of self, yeah, that sense of what your light is, where it comes from. That's where we can alleviate all the struggle and the stuckness and the resistance and the fear and the doubt when we strengthen our sense of self. And so that requires us to actually really know ourselves well, know what our strengths and values are, to have a strong sense of the kind of person we're here being in the world. And I think sometimes I'll just say that, I'm all about this. I'm a self-leadership coach, and it starts with self. But I think sometimes we have a funny sense of self, in the sense that so much of what we think about ourselves is actually more about the world. It's about how we show up in the world. It's about the roles we play in the world. It's about who we've had to be in the world, or what the world gets from us, needs from us, requires of us. And so the strengthening the sense of self in part is the self that is just for you, not about who you have to be in the world. So as an example, let's use the idea of our strengths. Strengths are something we're good at. Now, most people will be like, oh, yeah, that's something I'm good at. But we think of that as being what we offer because we're good at it, or what the world, needs from us because we're good at it. But there is a definition of strengths as what makes you stronger. And you don't do it because you're good at it, but you do it because it's good for you to do. And so that's what I mean when I say self as the you that's just for you. And when you have a really strong sense of that person, that self, then that's where your courage comes from. and your bravery comes from, and your vulnerability can come from, as much as you wish to share. Your sense of belonging with others comes from. So that's really the key. And I think that when we can tap into that sense of self, then it still might be tricky to take the next step forward, but the strength is coming from you, not from what anyone else says you should do, or who you should be, but rather who you know that you are. So that's what my advice would be. Start with self.
So beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. So if anyone would like to get these cards, would the best bet to be go to your website?
Yeah, pop over to my website. You'll see once you scroll down, the cards are there, and you can click through, and there's some bits of information there. There's also the link to that little ebook about the Lighthouse Keepers if you want to learn more about them. And yeah, have a browse at the other fun stuff that's there on offer.
And if they would like to work with you, obviously
that's all there too. Yeah, I have online classes, and my free ebook that you can find over at my website is all about enoughness and self-worth. And I think that's something many of us struggle with. But I think sometimes those of us who are showing up and shining in some way, we can wonder if we're, not enough for that. And so that whole ebook is really about the idea of claiming ourselves so we can claim our worth. So anybody that wanted to start strengthening that sense of self for themselves, that free ebook is a pretty simple, quick way to start, because it's not very long. It's not very onerous either. It's very simple and doable.
Beautiful. Please go and give Karen some love over at Instagram at Karen Gunton, and grab those cards and the ebook over at karengunton.com. I'll put it all in the show notes. And also too, if you feel like this episode would benefit someone share it with them. Share the love. Subscribe to Fearless Singer Podcast here on YouTube, or leave me a review on Spotify or Apple, because if you think this content would you benefit people, please get it out there. And Karen, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for the opportunity to tell your listeners and your singers about how the Lighthouse might be inspiring to build their own sense of self and that light that they're here to shine. I think that's what we're all here to do, in any way that 100%. Is. So I'm so glad that you support people to do that. As someone with a daughter who is a singer, I'm trying to encourage her to be a fearless singer myself. I think what you're doing is really important.
Oh, thank you so much, Karen. Thank you for making my 30th episode really special.
Thank you for having me.
See you. Oh, but don't you go. I'm just going to stop recording.
Yeah, gotcha.